The last woman left. Her selection by the cowboys stunned everyone. The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged dunes of Arroyo Prime, casting long shadows across the pale, sandy landscape. Small winds stirred the surface, lifting tiny motes of red dust into the air. Under the protective glass domes that covered the colony, life went on as usual, but beyond the domes, the land was wild, empty, and full of secrets. This was the territory that cowboys still roamed, not herding cattle anymore, but guiding people and machines across deserts that seemed to stretch into forever. And the man most trusted to do it was Caleb Rourke. Caleb was tall, lean, and quiet, with a calm way of watching everything at once. He rode a hovering hoverbike, more than a horse now, yet he moved with the old rhythms of the frontier, slow and measured. People trusted him because he noticed things they did not, the way a cloud of dust moved, how the wind shifted, or even the soft hum of the planet itself. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words carried weight. This morning, though, Caleb's usual calm was shaken. A single message blinked on his wrist, calm, a summons from the Central Colony Dome. The selection was coming. And for once Caleb felt a stir of unease he could not shake. The selection was a ceremony that happened once every decade. Its purpose was simple, or so the colony leaders said. One woman would be chosen from among the candidates to leave Arroyo Prime and join the coalition, a government that spanned multiple planets. Life there promised comfort, adventure, and a future free from the harshness of the frontier. Every decade, the people of Arroyo Prime waited for it with excitement and hope. Caleb had attended many selections in his lifetime, but he had never been asked to make the final choice. He never expected to. And yet, the colony's holographic message had been clear. Caleb Rourke is the designated selector. Your presence is required immediately. He brushed the rising wind from his coat, adjusted the strap of his hat, and guided his hoverbike toward the Capitol Dome. The path took him through rolling dunes that shimmered under the twin suns. He noticed how the sand shifted differently today, almost as if it were trying to tell him something. He felt a soft, strange vibration in the air, a pulse that ran through the ground into his boots. Caleb frowned. He had learned to listen to the desert, and it was unusual for it to speak like this. When he arrived at the dome, the scene inside was the opposite of the quiet, empty desert he had just left. Bright lights flickered, and a crowd of people moved nervously. Officials in crisp uniforms hustled back and forth, checking lists, adjusting screens, and whispering into small communicators. At the center of the room, a line of candidates waited, their expressions a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Most were young, full of energy and dreams. Some fidgeted, some smiled confidently. And then at the far edge, he noticed Mara Vale. She was easy to miss if one did not look carefully. Her brown hair fell in a loose braid, dusted faintly with the desert's red sand. Her hands were calloused, not from labor as others might guess, but from handling delicate signal equipment. Mara was one of the last remaining candidates. She worked quietly on the outskirts of the colony, tuning old communication arrays and listening to the soft static that hummed across the desert. Unlike the others, she didn't boast about her skills. She simply did them, day after day, unnoticed. The officials began their formalities. Holograms projected each candidate's information, showing their history, skills, and suitability. Caleb's name was announced, and every eye turned toward him. A hush fell across the room. For years, the selection had been a formality. The officials expected him to follow the pattern, to select the obvious candidate, the one with the brightest record or the loudest praise. Caleb looked at Mara. She was standing slightly apart, her posture relaxed but her eyes clear and alert. As he studied her, he felt a strange connection. The desert had stirred beneath him that morning, and now, inside the dome, he felt it again, as if the planet itself recognized her presence. A shiver ran up his spine, not from fear, but from understanding that something unusual was unfolding. The ceremony continued. Caleb watched as candidates stepped forward to present themselves. Each one spoke of their dreams, their hopes for the coalition, their desire to leave the harsh frontier behind. Their voices were polished and practiced. Mara waited silently. She said nothing. Yet somehow her silence was louder than words. Caleb realized that in her quiet there was honesty, and perhaps more than that, a deep unspoken understanding of the land itself. When it came time for the final selection, Caleb walked slowly toward the central podium. He felt all eyes on him. The officials leaned forward, expecting a safe, predictable choice. Caleb took a deep breath, remembering the pulse in the desert, the subtle vibrations that had guided him here. He looked at Mara, really looked at her, and made his decision. Mara Vale, he said, his voice calm but clear. She will be the final candidate for the selection. A gasp spread across the room. Officials exchanged shocked glances. Some muttered under their breath. The other candidates blinked, stunned. Mara herself froze, her eyes wide, uncertain whether to step forward or remain still. Caleb remained quiet, letting the moment stretch. It was clear that no one had expected this. No one, that is, except the desert. Mara finally stepped forward, her movements careful and deliberate. She had no grand gestures, no practiced smile. Yet there was a strength in her demeanor that seemed to fill the room. Caleb noticed how the lights reflected in her eyes, almost as if she could see beyond the walls of the dome, beyond the boundaries of Arroyo Prime, into the vast unknown of the stars. The officials began their questions, formalities that Caleb had seen hundreds of times before, but Mara answered in her own way, honest, simple, and quietly confident. She spoke of her work with the signal arrays, of the patterns she had heard in the static, and of the desert that seemed to hum along with her thoughts. Caleb realized that she wasn't just a candidate for the coalition. She might hold the key to something much larger, something no one had noticed until now. After the formalities ended, Caleb walked Mara out of the dome. The twin suns had climbed higher in the sky, making the dunes glitter like gold. Mara was quiet, looking around with curiosity and awe. Caleb felt a rare warmth in the empty desert. He had guided travelers across this land for years, but something about this moment felt different, almost sacred. Mara, he said finally, breaking the silence, the desert, it responds to you. I've never felt it this strongly before. Have you noticed it too? Mara looked at him, surprised, then nodded slowly. I've always heard the patterns, she said softly. The hums, the pulses, they speak to me, but no one else listens. Caleb smiled faintly. It seems the desert has chosen to speak to us together then. That's rare. They rode in silence for a while, hoverbike gliding over the dunes, sand sparkling beneath their path. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that the selection was no longer about leaving Arroyo Prime. It was about understanding it, about listening to something older and greater than anyone in the colony had imagined. Mara was the key. He just didn't know why yet. By the time they returned to the dome, a small crowd had gathered outside, curious and excited. Caleb knew that tomorrow, the real test of the selection would begin. For now, though, the desert was calm, the suns were warm, and Mara Vale had stepped into a future that no one, not even herself, fully understood. And somewhere deep beneath the sands, the planet stirred, as if aware that its last human listener had finally been found. The morning after the selection was quiet, but the air inside the dome felt heavier than usual. Word of Caleb's choice had spread like wildfire. Everywhere Mara Vale went, people stared. Some whispered behind their hands. Some shook their heads in disbelief. The other candidates were polite enough on the surface, but their eyes held the shadow of hurt and confusion. It was the first time in decades that the selection had caused such a stir. Caleb rode his hoverbike to the central hub where Mara worked, arriving before sunrise. The dust outside had settled into a golden haze, and the desert seemed to hum faintly beneath the twin suns. He found Mara hunched over a console, adjusting the settings of one of the old signal arrays. Sparks of soft blue light flickered across her hands as she worked, oblivious to the attention she had gained overnight. "Good morning," Caleb said, his voice low, careful not to startle her. Mara looked up, blinking against the glare of the rising sun. "Morning," she replied, her tone calm, almost neutral. I wasn't expecting anyone this early. I thought you might need company," Caleb said. He dismounted and leaned against the side of her console. "The people out there, they're talking. Not all of it nice."
Mara shrugged. "I expected that."
People don't like surprises, especially not when it changes what they believe is normal. Caleb studied her. She had a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention, but it made everyone else notice her anyway. There was something in the way she moved, the way she handled the delicate circuits and arrays, that made it clear she belonged somewhere bigger than the colony. But where, he did not yet know. "You've always worked out here, away from the domes," Caleb said. "Do you feel connected to this place? More than others?" Mara hesitated, then nodded. "I hear it. The static, the pulses under the sand. Sometimes it feels like the planet is trying to talk. I think most people don't listen. Or maybe they can't hear it at all." Caleb's brow furrowed. "You think the planet speaks only to certain people?" "I don't know," Mara admitted. "But it feels alive. Like it remembers things we don't." The words made Caleb uneasy. He had guided settlers across Arroyo Prime for years, yet he had never noticed anything like this. Perhaps that was why the desert had stirred the day he met her, why it seemed to respond when she passed. And now he understood something about the selection he had never considered before. It was not just about leaving the colony, it was about who could understand it. As they spoke, a small transport hovered toward them, carrying officials to oversee Mara's preparations. Caleb stepped aside to let them pass, but Mara looked uneasy. "They expect me to leave," she said softly. "I don't even know if I want to." Caleb placed a hand on the console beside her, close enough to be reassuring without crowding her. "No one is asking you what you want," he said gently. "But maybe that's the question you need to answer first." The officials arrived, clipboard screens flickering with data. They greeted Caleb politely but formally. "Rourke," one said, a tall man with sharp features. "We understand you have made the final selection. The preparations for transport will begin immediately. Candidate Vale will be taken to the Coalition vessel by tomorrow morning." Mara swallowed and glanced at Caleb. "I haven't even packed," she admitted. "Then we have time," Caleb said. He turned to the officials. "Before anything happens, she should see the place she's leaving behind. The planet. It's more than sand and wind." The officials hesitated, exchanging looks of irritation. Caleb's quiet authority made them uneasy. "We have other matters to attend to," the taller one said finally. "But, if you insist, a brief tour will be allowed." Caleb led Mara through the dunes, past towering sandstone spires and across the desert floor that glowed faintly with the planet's natural energy. The wind shifted around them in ways Caleb had never felt before, brushing against their faces and carrying whispers of soft static. Mara's eyes lit up. She listened. She moved slowly, her hands brushing the sand. "It's alive," she murmured. "It's speaking, just like I thought." Caleb nodded. "I've never felt it this way," he said. "Not like this." "You might be the only one who can hear it." They walked until the sun climbed high, casting the dunes in bright, stark gold. At the far edge of the desert, an old abandoned relay tower rose against the horizon. Caleb had passed it countless times but never entered. Mara paused, her hand brushing a carved symbol on the tower's metal wall. The symbol pulsed faintly in response to her touch, as if recognizing her presence. "What is this?" Caleb asked, stepping closer. "It's old," Mara said. "Older than any records. It wasn't built by settlers. I think it was always here, waiting." Inside, the relay tower hummed with faint energy. Arrays of antennas and wires spiraled toward the sky, many of them dormant, many barely functional. Mara ran her fingers along the controls, connecting circuits and adjusting frequencies. Slowly the tower lit up, casting a soft glow into the desert air. Caleb watched in awe as the desert itself seemed to respond. Small lights flickered across the dunes. Shadows shifted, not randomly, but in patterns, like the ground was alive with hidden currents of energy. "What is happening?" Caleb asked. Mara smiled faintly. "I think the planet remembers. It knows we're here. It's trying to wake up." For a moment, Caleb was silent, overwhelmed by the realization. The selection, the coalition, the expectations, they all seemed small compared to the vast intelligence that pulsed beneath the surface of the land. Mara was not just a candidate. She might be the key to something far larger than any official or colonist could imagine. The sound of approaching engines broke the moment. Officials were returning, their expressions sharp and demanding. "Vale!" one called. "You must prepare for immediate transport." Mara shook her head. "I can't leave. Not yet. There's something here I need to understand first." Caleb stepped between them. "She's not ready. And neither is the planet. You've been trying to take her away without knowing what she holds." The officials exchanged tense glances. Caleb's calm authority, combined with Mara's quiet insistence, gave them pause. No one argued further. As the sun began to set, Caleb and Mara climbed to the top of the tower, overlooking the desert. The wind carried whispers of energy across the dunes, faint but unmistakable. Mara closed her eyes, letting the signals flow through her, feeling the pulse of the planet like a heartbeat. "You hear it too, don't you?" she asked. Caleb nodded slowly. "Yes. And I think it's asking us to stay at least a little longer." Mara smiled, a mix of relief and excitement. "Then we'll listen. Together." The sky darkened, revealing a blanket of stars above. In the distance, the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the desert. For the first time in years, Caleb felt a sense of purpose beyond guiding travelers. He wasn't just escorting a candidate. He was standing at the edge of something incredible, something that could change the future of Arroyo Prime forever. The officials left for the night, frustrated but unable to force the issue. Caleb and Mara remained on the tower, listening to the desert's whispers. The planet's pulse grew stronger with every passing hour, and for the first time the frontier felt alive with possibilities. Mara finally spoke, her voice soft but certain. "I don't know what the Coalition expects of me, but I know what the planet expects, and I can't leave it behind." Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we don't. Not yet. We'll figure this out. Whatever it takes, we'll understand it before anyone makes a choice for us." The desert stretched endlessly around them, silent but not empty. Caleb knew the journey ahead would not be easy. The selection, the officials, the expectations, they were all obstacles that had to be faced. But for now, under the twin moons and among the glowing sands, he understood something crucial. Some choices were bigger than anyone could imagine. And some people, like Mara, were meant to listen when no one else could. For the first time, Caleb and Mara weren't just cowboys and settlers. They were explorers, listeners, and stewards of a world that had been waiting for someone like her for centuries, and the true adventure was only beginning. The desert night on Arroyo Prime was alive with quiet energy. Beneath the twin moons, the dunes glimmered faintly, as if the sand itself had absorbed light and memory from centuries past. Caleb Rourke and Mara Vale had returned to the relay tower, their hoverbikes parked at the edge of the dunes, the hum of distant machinery mixed with the whispering wind, creating a strange, soothing rhythm. Tonight, they were not cowboys or candidates. They were explorers on the edge of discovery. Mara climbed the narrow metal stairs of the tower with a purposeful ease, her fingers tracing the grooves in the railing as though reading hidden messages. Caleb followed, his eyes scanning the desert below, alert but unafraid. Something had changed since yesterday. The air felt thicker, charged, as though the planet itself had grown aware of them. "Have you ever felt it this strong before?" Caleb asked, his voice low, barely audible over the wind. Mara shook her head, eyes wide with wonder. "Never. Not even close. It's awake tonight. I can hear it, clearer than ever." At the top of the tower, they stood before the largest control panel, a network of wires, switches, and dormant holographic interfaces. Mara reached out, her fingers lightly touching a sensor embedded in the metal. The console flickered to life with a soft blue glow. Energy rippled through the room, spreading outward. Caleb watched as holographic images appeared in the air, patterns of the desert, faint symbols he had never seen before, and tiny pulses moving like streams of light across the dunes. Mara's eyes followed the movements, scanning, reading, interpreting. "It's beautiful," Caleb said. "But what is it showing?" Mara hesitated. "I think the planet is trying to show its memory, its history. The structures, the life, the people who have walked here before us. All of it is connected." Caleb stepped closer, studying the patterns. The images were not random. They pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat, linking dunes, towers, and hidden valleys in a network of glowing threads. It was as if the desert was alive, not just in a physical sense, but as a conscious being, capable of memory and thought. "How can a planet think?" Caleb asked, disbelief clear in his voice. Mara smiled faintly, not with amusement, but with certainty. "Maybe it doesn't think like we do. Maybe it listens, remembers, and responds. And maybe it has been waiting for someone to understand it." Caleb felt a chill run down his spine. The thought was staggering. All his life he had guided travelers, read the land, and understood its moods. But he had never imagined that the desert itself could be alive, sentient even. And yet the proof was right before him, pulsing in the air like starlight made tangible. Suddenly a section of the holographic display shifted, revealing a faint hidden valley deep beneath the dunes. It glowed with a soft green light, unlike anything on the surface. Mara's eyes widened. "That's hidden," she whispered. "I've read about the valley in old maps, but it was always marked as unknown or forbidden. No one has ever gone there." Caleb frowned. "Why show it to us now?" Mara's fingers hovered over the panel, adjusting the frequencies. "Because it's ready. Because we're ready. The planet, it knows. I think it wants to share its secret." For the next several hours, they worked together, Mara deciphering signals, Caleb assisting where he could. The desert responded to them in real time. Sand shifted, forming natural patterns that mirrored the holograms. Lights glimmered beneath the dunes like hidden stars, pulsing with life. Each revelation made Caleb's heart pound, not with fear, but with awe. As the hours passed, a plan began to form in Mara's mind. She turned to Caleb. "If we want to see the valley, we'll need to travel there. The terrain is dangerous in places. Not physically, no cliffs or storms, but the patterns shift. The planet protects it. It only reveals paths for those who are meant to see it." Caleb nodded. "Then we follow, whatever it takes." The next morning, they began their descent across the dunes toward the hidden valley. Mara guided them using signals from the relay tower, pointing out subtle vibrations in the sand and faint hums in the air. Caleb followed closely, trusting her instincts completely. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, casting bright light across the desert, revealing beauty he had never noticed before. Sparkling sand crystals, winds that danced in elegant spirals, and tiny pockets of green life resilient against the arid land. Finally, they arrived at the edge of the hidden valley. From above, it looked like a small depression in the sand, but as they descended, the colors and lights became more vivid. The valley glowed with soft green luminescence, plants shimmering faintly in rhythm with the pulses Mara had read from the relay tower. The air here carried a faint, musical hum that resonated deep in their chests. Mara knelt, touching the ground. The plants reacted, shifting their glow in response. "It's alive," she whispered. "Everything here, it's aware." Caleb looked around in awe. The valley was not only a sanctuary, it was a library, a living archive of the planet's memory. Patterns in the sand told stories of the first settlers, long-forgotten journeys, and hints of knowledge lost over time. It was as if a royal prime had preserved its history here, waiting for someone who could understand it. As they explored, Mara found an unusual rock formation with a faint carving on its surface. She traced the lines with her fingers. The carvings responded to her touch, glowing softly. Caleb watched as a small holographic map appeared in the air, showing the desert above, the hidden valley, and pathways that led to other secret locations. "The planet isn't just alive," Mara said, eyes wide. "It's guiding us. It wants us to explore, to learn, to protect it." Caleb nodded slowly, understanding the enormity of what she said. "Then we can't let the Coalition take you. They don't understand any of this." Mara looked at him, conflicted. "I was chosen to leave, but now I don't know if leaving is the right choice. Not if this is what I'm meant to do." The realization settled heavily between them. The selection had never been about escape or prestige. It had been about discovery, understanding, and responsibility. Mara's role was far greater than anyone had anticipated. She was not just a candidate. She was a guardian of a royal prime secret. For the rest of the day, they explored the valley, discovering hidden pools of water that shimmered with bioluminescent life, plants that reacted to thought rather than touch, and subtle energy fields that connected one part of the valley to another. The planet's intelligence was everywhere, subtle but undeniable, and it welcomed Mara like a long-lost friend. As night fell again, the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the valley. Mara and Caleb climbed a small hill overlooking the entire sanctuary. The desert outside the valley was dark and silent, but here, the valley pulsed gently with green and blue light, a living heart beneath the sand. "This is incredible," Caleb said softly. "I've guided travelers all my life, but I've never seen anything like this." Mara smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the valley. "I think this is only the beginning. The planet has so much to show us, if we're willing to listen." Caleb put a hand on her shoulder. "Then we stay, we learn, and we make sure no one interferes until we understand it fully." Mara nodded. For the first time since the selection began, she felt a sense of purpose, clear and unwavering. She was not leaving a royal prime. Not yet. The planet had chosen her just as she had chosen to listen, and together they would uncover its secrets, one pulse, one pattern, and one story at a time. Far above, the stars twinkled, silent witnesses to the unfolding discovery. Somewhere deep beneath the desert sands, a royal prime thrummed with life, aware that its last listener had finally arrived. And for Caleb and Mara, the frontier they had known was no longer simply a place of survival. It was a gateway to something greater, a living story waiting to be told. The twin moons hung low over a royal prime, casting soft silver light across the desert dunes. The hidden valley glowed with quiet energy. green and blue pulses rippling through the sand like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Caleb Rourke and Mara Vale stood at the edge of the valley, overlooking the sanctuary they had discovered. The hum of the desert beneath them was strong, almost like a song, and it resonated deep inside their chests. For days they had explored, listened, and learned. Each pulse, each flicker of light, told them more about Arroyo Prime's history and the intelligence that guided it. Mara's connection to the planet had grown stronger, and Caleb had learned to read its subtle messages too. Together they had uncovered the living story of the desert, its hidden patterns, its secret valleys, and its forgotten memories. But even as they reveled in the discovery, reality waited outside the valley. The coalition had sent envoys. Officials from the Capitol Dome were demanding answers. The selection was not over, not officially. And if Mara left, the planet's secret could be lost forever. Caleb turned to Mara. "They're coming. Soon. And they'll expect you to go with them." Mara's jaw tightened. I don't think I can leave. Not now. Not after everything I've seen." Caleb nodded. "Then we need to show them what's here. They need to understand. If they refuse, we'll have to protect this place. Quietly. Without force." The next morning, the transport arrived. Officials stepped out, their expressions firm, their eyes scanning the valley with curiosity and suspicion. They had not expected Caleb to defy orders. They had not expected Mara to resist. "Vale," one official called, holding a glowing tablet with her information. "You are required to join the coalition immediately. Your skills are needed. There is no further delay." Mara shook her head, stepping forward with confidence. "I cannot leave. Not yet. This planet, it is alive. It has memories, knowledge. It needs me here." The officials exchanged uneasy glances. Caleb stepped beside her. "The planet is not just sand and rock. It is intelligent. It communicates. Mara is its last listener. You cannot take her without understanding what she holds." The tallest official frowned. "Are you suggesting that a planet speaks? That this is more important than the selection?" Caleb nodded. "Yes. And if you try to take her now, you will lose the chance to understand it entirely. The planet doesn't give up its secrets lightly." The officials hesitated, unsure how to respond. Mara turned and focused on the valley. She closed her eyes, letting the pulses of energy flow through her. Light spread across the sand, connecting every plant, every rock, and every hidden hollow. The officials gasped as the valley came alive before their eyes, glowing and shimmering, humming with an intelligence that could no longer be ignored. This is impossible," one muttered. "It is very real," Mara said softly. "And it is waiting for someone who will listen. That someone is me. And for now, I cannot leave." Caleb watched the officials struggle to comprehend what they were seeing. The coalition had expected a simple procedure: select a candidate, prepare transport, and move on. They had not expected a living, thinking planet to reveal itself. They had not expected Mara to choose to stay. For the first time, the officials hesitated. Orders alone could not compel them to act against the truth in front of them. The planet pulsed, its energy rising like a tide, and Mara stood at the center, the anchor between human understanding and planetary memory. Over the next several hours, they guided the officials through the valley. Mara demonstrated the pulses, the hidden paths, and the plants that reacted to thought. She showed how the desert outside was subtly connected to the hidden sanctuary, how each dune, each wind shift was part of a larger system of communication. Caleb assisted, explaining the patterns he had observed over the years. Slowly, the official skepticism began to fade. By sunset, even the hardest of the envoys understood that Arroyo Prime was alive, aware, and protective of its secrets. One of them spoke quietly to the others. "Perhaps this is not just a frontier. Perhaps it is a living partner, and she is its guardian." Mara smiled faintly. "Exactly. The selection is not about leaving. It is about understanding. I was chosen to listen, not to go." The tallest official stepped forward, hesitating. "Then, perhaps this colony, this planet, should be treated differently. Protected, not exploited. And she should remain here, if she chooses." Mara nodded, relieved. "That is what the planet wants." Caleb rested a hand on her shoulder. "And that is what we will do." The officials returned to their transport, documenting what they had seen, but no longer insisting on immediate departure. Word would reach the coalition that the frontier had revealed something unexpected, something that required caution and respect. And for the first time in decades, the selection ended without anyone leaving, because the purpose of the selection had been redefined. That night, Caleb and Mara sat atop the hill overlooking the valley. The hum of the planet was strong, a steady rhythm that resonated deep in their bones. The twin moons reflected in Mara's eyes, silver and calm. "You know," Caleb said softly, "the frontier used to be about survival, but now it's something more, something alive." Mara nodded. "And we are part of it. The desert chose me, and in choosing me, it asked me to listen, to learn, to protect." Caleb smiled. I understand why you were the final choice, not because of skills or records, but because you could hear it. You could see what no one else could." "And you," Mara said, looking at him, "you helped me understand it too. You listened even when it didn't make sense. That makes you part of this as well." For the next days, they explored further. They found other hidden pockets of the planet's intelligence, small groves where plants hummed, sand dunes that shifted into patterns like messages, and shallow pools of water that mirrored stars long past. Each discovery strengthened Mara's bond with the Royal Prime and deepened Caleb's respect for her abilities. By the time the next moons rose, they had mapped much of the hidden valley and recorded patterns that no one else had ever seen. The colony dome below them, once the center of human control, now felt like a small outpost compared to the living world that stretched beneath their feet. One evening, as they watched the twin moons reflect in a shimmering pool, Mara spoke. "I think this is only the beginning. The planet has more to show. More secrets, more messages. I could spend a lifetime listening and still not understand it fully." Caleb nodded. "And you will. We'll discover it together." "The frontier has changed, Mara, and we're part of that change." For the first time, the future felt vast, exciting, and hopeful. The desert, alive and aware, had chosen its listener. Mara had accepted her role, and Caleb, the quiet cowboy who had always guided others through the unknown, had become her companion in discovery. The stars above twinkled, a silent chorus to the living heartbeat beneath the sand. The twin moons reflected off the valley's glow, casting silver and green light across the dunes. A Royal Prime was awake, alive, and no longer just a barren frontier. It was a world with memory, with intelligence, with purpose. And for Caleb and Mara, the frontier was no longer about escape or survival. It was about exploration, understanding, and partnership with a world that had waited centuries for someone who could truly hear it. The desert hummed softly beneath them, a lullaby of stars, sand, and hidden life. And in that hum, they knew the future would be theirs to shape, together with the planet guiding them, one pulse at a time.